Howdy, howdy. If you stumbled on this video, chances are you're probably curious about poison dart frogs. And if that's the case, I'm sure you got millions of questions. I know I did. And we're gonna take a deep dive into poison dart frog care, some do's, some don'ts, some questions, some concerns, and even a few myths that we're gonna dispel today. One of the very first questions I get when people find out that I keep poison dart frogs is, how dangerous is keeping poison dart frogs? Well, I hate to burst your bubble if you thought you were getting a dangerous exotic pet, but unless you're sourcing it directly from the wild, you're not gonna have an actual poison dart frog. It's actually the diet out in the wild that gives them their poisonous properties. It's the insects that they eat that have toxins which they absorb and then secrete through their skin. That being said, touching your poison dart frog is a major no-no. You actually have oils that you secrete through your skin, and there's also toxins that you pick up just by touching things in your day-to-day. And if you handle your dart frogs, chances are they are going to absorb that through their skin, which could kill them. They really don't like to be manhandled anyway. It is a stressful situation for them, and it's better to just observe your poison dart frog. One of the main benefits of owning poison dart frogs is that their bioactive terrarium that you build them actually features as its own centerpiece in your home. I personally take a lot of pride in making them look as realistic and as cool as possible. We're gonna go over a few of the basics of terrarium building and creating a bioactive environment for your poison dart frog. However, I do have a complete comprehensive guide on how to build your very own bioactive poison dart frog vivarium, and it's actually based on the build for this one right behind me here. A false bottom is a drainage layer, meaning that the bottom of your terrarium is actually collecting water that's gonna be sitting there waiting for the plants to use it, and water that's sifting through your entire terrarium every time you missed your plants. It is very important to have a drainage layer keeping the stagnant water off of your soil, or else it'll start to rot and it will smell absolutely disgusting. One thing you're gonna wanna make sure you do when you create an environment for your poison dart frog is you're gonna wanna give them vertical space to climb, and you're also gonna wanna make sure that you give them lots of plants to hide in. Another thing to consider is different species of poison dart frogs require different care guides. If you're anything like me, when you started researching the different types of poison dart frogs, you probably got a little excited and imagined having a few different species and colors in your bioactive setup. There's a few reasons that you don't want to do this. First and foremost, it's conservation efforts for the poison dart frogs themselves. You're no longer allowed to source a lot of these frogs from the wild, so it's very important to keep the lines pure so we can have the different types of dart frogs stay the same as they are. Let's talk bioactive cleanup crews. You're gonna wanna make sure that your terrarium is bioactive. This means that you have a cleanup crew consisting of Springtails, and I also use mini dwarf isopods. Now what they're gonna do is eat the decaying plant matter as well as any of the frog waste. This means your cleaning up consists of just trimming the plants once in a while, which I personally propagate the trimmings and use for further builds. They're also a great little snack source for your poison dart frog in between feeding sessions, or if one of your fruit fly cultures crashes and it takes a little while to get a new one. One common misconception a lot of people get about keeping poison dart frogs is that you want to keep their environment completely soaked all the time, but that couldn't be further from the truth. If you keep your dart frog wet at all times, they'll actually start to rot out on their feet. So what you want to do is you want to provide a nice dry leaf litter on the ground for them to be able to dry off their little toes. Also, this creates a great environment for the isopods, springtails, as well as other small microfauna which will grow and create a whole ecosystem. One of the benefits of having heavily planted vivariums in your home is that they actually smell great, and they're a natural air filter. When you open this bad boy up, it literally smells like the forest floor. One product that I especially recommend getting is called the Frog Daddy Wet Moss Mix. So go to frogdaddy.com and get the wet moss mix to apply to your backdrop. That's what I did on this polydarium here, and it's the best result I've ever seen. There's tons of little micro plants as well as mosses, and you just can't go wrong. Just trust me, thank me later. The thing you're gonna wanna make sure that you do is achieve a high humidity for your dart frog. Most dart frogs require anywhere from 70% humidity and up. The best way to achieve this is by getting a misting system, or you can actually hand mist them as well. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have a terrarium which is closed, and especially at the top, if it's got a screen, you're gonna wanna put something over it. Cheap options are saran wrap. Personally, I think it looks a little trashy, so I use an acrylic sheet on here, and that's been working really well for me. You can just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and they'll cut one for you to size if you don't already have one that's fitting to what you need. Speaking of hand misting versus misting systems, one thing that I noticed with an automatic misting system is that it doesn't get the whole tank coverage. So you're gonna have dry spots that inevitably are gonna need hand misting anyway. So personally, I recommend just hand misting it. It allows you to be a little more intimate with your animals. It gives you more window time in front of your terrarium, and you can assess how everything is doing and monitor things a little bit better, especially when you're starting out. Also, it gives the frogs a little bit more face-to-face with you, making them more comfortable and more bold in the long term. One thing that I definitely recommend you get is a reverse osmosis water filtration system. That's gonna be key. Personally, I go through about 1 gallon of distilled water a day. Granted, I do use it to water my other plants as well, but that's about $1.50 to $2 from the store these days. So you do the math. I'm saving about $600 a year, and it only costs me about $70. And I'll link the one that I use in the description. Now we're gonna come to something very controversial, and that is water features or water in your poison dart frog terrarium. I'm not 100% sure where this misconception comes from, but a lot of people are under the impression that dart frogs will drown if you put a water feature in your terrarium. I personally have not had that experience. Now, just in case, it is a good precaution to not have a super deep water feature. And if you have a water feature, you're gonna wanna make sure that that water is cycling. For example, the one I have behind me here, all of the water draws from the false bottom and then is sucked through to the top of the water feature with the pump. Any of the water going through that feature is constantly being filtered by the plants, and I also added a bunch of activated carbon. Once again, if you want to emulate my water feature to make sure you do it right, then I will recommend you watch the video that I'll link at the end of this on the full build guide for this terrarium that I did behind me. Where to get plants? Now, I get this question a lot. Personally, I got all my plants from frogdaddy.com. He just makes it super simple. There's great descriptions on all the different plants. They're broken down by biodome. And if you have questions, you can always add Alex Menka on Facebook. He is the owner of frogdaddy.com, and he will answer all the questions you have. He is very responsive and super accommodating. Or if you can't get a hold of him, leave a comment. I'd be sure to answer any questions you have. Let's talk about heating and lighting real quick. Lighting is super simple. Personally, I just got my lighting system off of joshsfrogs.com. He's got plenty of light fixtures for you. Just pick the one that's the size of your tank. Now you're gonna be asking yourself, how warm should I keep it for my poison dart frog? Do I have to add a heater, anything like that? In most instances, the answer is gonna be no. They prefer the temperature to be about room temperature, maybe a little bit warmer, but I wouldn't worry about it. Your light is actually gonna produce a little bit of heat as well, which should bring it up to about 75 degrees in your tank, which is where they thrive. So what do you feed your poison dart frog? What I have here is a culture of flightless fruit flies. I breed these, it's super simple. I have a video on how to do it here. One of these will last about a month before it burns out and stops producing fruit flies. I go to feed my flightless fruit flies to my frogs. What I do is I pour some of the flies into this jar, then I add some Ripashi calcium powder. Now this stuff is super important. They have to have this. I put it on every single feeding and I feed them every day. You're also gonna wanna get some vitamin A+. I use Ripashi for this. You're only gonna wanna feed them about once a month because you do not wanna overdo it with the vitamin A, but it is still a crucial part of their diet. One thing that a lot of people sleep on is carotenoids. Carotenoids help give your poison dart frog vibrant colors, especially if your poison dart frog, or even if it's an exotic pet that has red, you're gonna want carotenoids. I give this to them about once every 2 weeks. A lot of people ask me about breeding poison dart frogs. I don't have a ton of experience with this yet, but my Ranitomea fantastica have produced eggs, and I do have tadpoles in my pool now. And I didn't do anything to make that happen. They did that on their own. So I would say, yes, it's pretty easy. I've heard of people putting out coconut husks with little petri dishes of water to collect the eggs to ensure that all the eggs survive. And then you can raise them in little film canisters. Personally, I figured as long as you give them little bits of fish food flakes, they'll be all right in the pond feature of my polydarium. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like and subscribe. If I forgot anything, please feel free to let me know. I really hope I was able to help you out a little bit, and I'll see you on the next one. If you want to check out that poison dart frog build video, I'll link that in the description, or you can click on it right here.